What's up, everybody? I'm Alan Seslowsky. I'm with my friend John Alesia, aka Statsational, and we're back for another episode of the Beat the Bookie podcast, sponsored by Sportsbet Army and DFS Army. John, it's been a few minutes since we've done this. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. It has been. It's been long overdue. I'm glad we're getting back on track on the last day here of this wonderful year.
Yeah, for those of you listening on the replay on the audio cast, it's December 31st, 2020, and we're about to enter into the new year. And for those of you joining us for the first time, what the Beat the Bookie podcast is, it discusses all things sports gambling, and no better person to discuss those things than John Alesia, aka Statsational on Twitter and at Sportsbet Army, who has been, for lack of a better term, you're a professional sports gambler. You do make your living from sports betting.
I do have to follow that in my taxes. So especially with the DFS, that's my main source of income. Yes.
Yeah, and so what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about what I think is a really interesting phenomenon in sports wagering. It's the gambler's fallacy, and I'm going to let you explain that. But before I do, just for those out there who hear you're a professional gambler, explain to the slight margin, the difference between earning a living in sports gambling and losing money in sports gambling. I mean, what percentage does the average professional make money?
Like what percentage, what win rate, let's say.
Yes. What do you have to do to actually make money?
Yeah.
What's your win rate have to be?
So you're going to have to be in a really, really strong win rate on a minus 110, which is your typical spread type of bet. If you're betting the NBA, NFL, you're going to want to be in that 56% range. Just think about it this way. Let's say you're 55. Let's say you pick a phenomenal NFL season, 60%, and you take 100 games, which is quite a few games to bet. That's 60 wins, 40 losses. If they were all minus 110, which on average they're going to be about a minus 110 bet, you're 20 bets, let's say, above 500, minus the juice, which is going to be on 40 games, 10% juice, another 4. So you're basically going to be up 16 units on the, and that's at 60% win rate. So think about if your unit size was $1,000, which is a fairly significant bet size, that's still only a $16,000 in profit that you're looking at in the NFL. And to have $1,000, you're going to want to have probably about $100,000 bankroll, $70,000 to $100,000 bankroll. So it is very difficult, and that's at winning at 60%. So you need bankroll, and of course you need to be winning at a fairly high percentage.
Yeah. So just so you know, anyone that goes on a run and like an ungodly run of win rate and you're hitting like 60% of your bets, I mean, you are a god status at that point. It's almost unheard of. Hitting 6 of every 10 bets, you're making money. And most people think that if I hit at least half of my bets, I'll make money. But as you just outlined, because of the VIG, because of the juice, you actually lose money. You need to hit, what is it? You need to win
52.4% on the minus 110 bets to break even. Yeah.
All right. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about a very interesting topic called the gambler's fallacy. Why don't we start out by just giving a basic definition that if you were explain it as you were explaining it to my 90-year-old grandmother. What is the sports gamblers or the gambler's fallacy?
You know what? I'm going to read you the definition as Investopedia has it, and then I'll kind of explain my translation of that. So the definition on Investopedia is the gambler's fallacy is the belief that the chances of something happening with a fixed probability become higher or lower as the process is repeated. People who commit to the gambler's fallacy believe that past events affect the probability of something happening in the future. Really what that means is typically you'll see this in games like roulette, craps, whatever it is, where there might be a run of a certain number. So in craps, maybe the 7 just hasn't come out in the last 10 rolls, or in roulette, black has come out now 10 times in a row.
That's the one, roulette.
Yeah.
How many times have you seen people, myself included, have been to the casino and you're like, wow, this table has had 10 blacks in a row. It must be red coming out next.
Yeah. Now, when I first started going to the casino, whatever you want to call it,
the electronic board, yeah.
They didn't have those in a lot of casinos yet. The reason they have those is specifically for the gambler's fallacy, because the casino knows that no matter what has happened in the past, it's not going to change the outcome of a set of something that has a set probability. And certainly roulette or craps, there's no memory to those dice. There's no memory to the ball and the wheel in those games. But yet we see, and I do it myself, and I know the math behind it. And yet you get the feeling like, boy, as soon as 4 or 5 reds come out in a row, it works two ways. You either say, boy, red is hot right now, I'm going to continue to play red, or you think, boy, black is really due to come out. I better start playing black because I've seen 4 or 5 reds in a row. And that's why they really put that the readout there next to the tables so that you can see exactly what's going on. You see 10 reds, a lot of people will come and play because they think black has a higher likelihood of coming out.
So let me get this straight and just tell me, I'm going to repeat it back to you in layman's terms. The gambler's fallacy essentially means that when you're talking about fixed probabilities, regardless of past or future outcomes, the individual event that we are focused on does not change probabilities based on past events, both positive and negatively.
That's 100% correct. So if I told you, again, we'll go back to the roulette situation. If I told you 6 reds came out in a row, what's the probability that this next roll or next spin on the roulette table is going to be a red? What would the probability be?
Given that there's only black or red outcomes?
Let's just say there's only black or there's no green. Let's just say it's black or red.
So the correct answer is 50%.
Correct. But a lot of people, of course, don't think that, just for the reasons that we just stated. So it's easy to stand back and, when you're not in it, say, okay, yeah, no, it's 50-50. If you're in the middle of playing and you've been betting black and it just keeps coming red, and now you're on the 4th one and the 5th one, it messes with your mind. Even though you know that whatever's just happened in the last 5 spins is not going to change anything about what the next spin is going to be. And I've had arguments with, I don't want to say they're geniuses because, but people who are not total, they're not stupid. And I've had arguments with people who are just not dumb, who really, really believe that, let's say in the craps table, if they've gone a certain amount of spins without a 7 coming out, that the likelihood of a 7 coming out on the next spin is higher. Or if a 7 comes out on this roll of the dice, there's less probability it's going to come back again. Which is totally what you're confusing is if I told you right now, take a coin out of your pocket and flip it, what's the probability of 6 heads coming out in a row? That's a different calculation than 5 heads have come out in a row. What's the probability that this next one is going to be ahead?
In the gambler's fallacy, I think the key piece that you're telling me here is that on a fixed single event is not affected by past events. Once you start combining events, then you're talking about multiplying probability. So let me ask you, so we're living a COVID-19 world. No one in most states is allowed to go to a casino. Where else do we see the gambler's fallacy applied specifically in sports betting? Sports betting is exploding. That's why you're over at sportsbetarmy.com. By the way, if you want to go over to sportsbetarmy.com and try out a membership, you could always use code BET, B-E-T, get 20% off. And also, you could DM any of us at any time, and we'll tell you about some other great opportunities that are over there. But how do you apply the gambler's fallacy to someone in sports, something that applies to us right now?
Yeah, there's a few ways, right? So I'm going to talk about both aspects, from the positive side and then from the negative side, and just how it comes into play on a sports betting. So right now, I'm currently in the middle of a not so good run on college basketball. Okay, so I don't know the exact. I know one of the models that I work with is 6 games under 500, which is significant. Now, this is a model that I've run for 500 plus games. It's hit at 57% of the time in live betting action. So it's been a very profitable model for me. So when you take into account, you're saying 500 or 600 games I've bet using this strategy. And now I've played 20 games in which I'm under 500 by a decent amount, 6 games under 500. It weighs on your head where you say, maybe there's something wrong here. Maybe I should stop playing these games. They're not winning. I should really bail on this strategy. When I have a history of 500 to 600 games of profit, and when we start to look at it in the very in the very micro level, like we are, and we're in the middle of, when you're in the middle of that losing streak, it becomes very, very difficult to figure out if you should continue to play or not. So in this instance, I have to even remind myself that, hey, this is going to this too shall pass. So I run like I just did a in Excel before we got on here. Real easy. If anyone watching this knows how to do random, just pick random numbers in Excel. If you do that and then you assign all the numbers above 50, we'll take 50-50 propositions. Anything above 50 is a win. Anything below 50 is a loss. And run it for 100 times, 200 times. It's the equivalent of basically flipping a coin in real life. And then take note of just how many times in a row you get a winning streak and a losing streak. That's essentially what's going to happen to you in the real world of sports betting if you're betting on these 50-50 type of events like spread bets tend to be. And if you look at it, you may very well be, I just ran it at 55%. So I said, okay, I have a system that runs 55%. I'm going to run 100 games. I ran 200 games. Now, almost every time the 55%, in 200 games, I'm going to be about 55%. They're hard numbers. This isn't real. This isn't basketball. This is just basically flipping a coin that has an edge on one side of 55%. I just reran it like 5 times. 4 of the 5 times, I was profitable over 200 events. I was actually down on my hypothetical Excel spreadsheet. One of them was about I don't know, it was like 90, 96 and 104 or something like that over 200 games. So that's with a bias of 55%. So it can happen. And
right, what you're saying is that the 45% can come in, for 200 times. I mean, there's not, just because you have an advantage overall, but that advantage is over 50,000 spins or whatever.
Right. That's right. And when you look at it even closer, you're going to have long runs of wins and you're going to have long runs of losses. I believe so. The number that you're guaranteed in 32, if you flip a coin 32 times, you're almost guaranteed that you're going to get either heads or tails 5 times in a row out of 32. And more specifically, if you want to just do a heads run or a tails run, it would be more than that. But yeah, if you do, here's another example, or within sports itself.
Yeah, we got it. Before you continue with that, we just got a question right here, because I think it relates to what you're saying. Yep. Is from Daryl Bass. He said, "Do pro sports bettors dictate 100% of their bets off a model program, or do they ever go based off a feel like an average bettor does?" That's actually a really good question.
Yeah, it is. It is a good question. I would say that, especially in 2020, 2021 now, I don't want to give an absolute answer, I would say, but at least over 95% of bettors these days are doing everything based off of models and algorithms and whatnot. They're at least the profitable ones.
Well, he's right. He's asking, So pros, they're not going to use gut feel like the average bettor does, and that's what makes them pros. They stick to their model. And just piggybacking off that question, John, when professional bettors or model-based bettors, when do they know when to tinker with the algorithm? When do they know when? I mean, like you said, it's easy to get frightened off when you're cold.
Yeah, that's really the $1 million question. And what you have to do is try to figure out, has anything changed? Now, when I talk about this college basketball run, that's my dilemma right now, is because things are so much different. The schedule is different. These guys are playing back-to-back games. I'm noticing a lot of my back-to-back games are not, it's not working. You don't have fans at a lot of these events. So that's the difficulty in sports betting. We look at it all the time, like everything is always constant, but things change. They change the rules. College basketball has changed the shot clock rule within recent years. The NFL has changed rules on fouls and whatnot. We saw the NBA when they were playing in the bubble. We saw games were going over quite a bit initially because they were calling more fouls, because they were able to hear, you referee, you're able to hear the slaps a lot easier. And they were calling more fouls because there were no fans, something a lot of people didn't anticipate. So my answer to that really is, can you come up with a logical reason why your model may not be working? If not, you have to continue to play that model if that model has proven to be successful over time. It's why if you are building a model, it's one thing you build a model based off of old data and you're back testing that data. Then I like to have a time of actual live testing, and I like to test it live, even if it's for a small amount of money. Actually playing the games and actually betting the games, as opposed to just what we call paper trading and writing it down. You will notice differences. It's very hard. You like to think you're going to be really disciplined and you're writing everything down and you're giving yourself the line that you would have gotten. It becomes really easy to even trick yourself without even knowing you're doing it. So I like to even play a small percentage of a typical bet size in a live environment, just to get a feel for how this strategy or system, whatever you want to call it, is working. But yeah, again, back to the initial question, absolutely. It's very few professionals are using feel when it comes to sports betting.
Question for you as well. So you were talking about adjusting your model with NFL, for example. Traditionally, we assign 3 points for the home field advantage. Did your NFL model adjust for that? Was it still 3 points, or was it more like 1.5 points, given that there was no crowds in the NFL this year?
I actually cut it down to 0.
So you were giving no points for a home field.
Correct.
You were doing neutral field.
Yes.
Space. Okay. Well, explain that. That's interesting.
Okay. So, I'll explain what my logic was, and we've talked about this before. With the home field advantage in all sports, the home field advantage has been proven to be, the reason it exists is referees. And what they found is the sports where the fans are actually closer to the action, the greater the home field advantage. So basketball universally, globally, had like a 57 or 58% home field advantage. And that worked in the Israeli leagues. It worked in China. It worked in the European leagues, and it worked in the NBA.
As you know, I officiate high school basketball, and I can certainly attest to your hypothesis there, or your findings, that even though you try not to have bias, you don't want, there is when the crowds are hostile and the crowds are actually, it does play a part. It doesn't influence heavily, but there is influence there. So yes, I agree with what you just said.
There's 100% influence, and the one study that they did was they took the biggest home field advantage or home pitch advantage would be in soccer across the world, because some regions in soccer are extremely hostile. When you go into some of these leagues, it's actually dangerous for some of the officials. So it goes without saying, there's a reason why some of these officials will call a game that they'll call it, and err on the side of the home team. In some of these more, Russian soccer, some of the South American soccer leagues, you won't get it as much in, let's say, the major EPL, the English Premier League, but there's still a home field advantage. Now, what we're seeing is home field advantages have gone down. They've diminished quite a bit. The reason being is replay in almost every sport. As the NBA has implemented more replay within like the last 2 minutes, they're allowed to replay the change of possessions or out of bounds, things like that. Foul calls can be challenged. Obviously, in the NFL, we've had replay for quite some time, but the more that they add replay into the mix and more things, baseball, you see it now. Baseball has gone from like maybe a 52, 53% home field advantage down to virtually, I believe it's almost 0. Now, the reason I said this in the NFL was now because when you're playing without the fans, I know a lot of people wanted to say, well, travel. A lot of people look at that. Well, traveling across the country, it really has very little. It has very little effect on the games. And what we've seen so far this year, home field advantage is exactly 1/4 point. It's 0.27 points this year, so it's really nothing. And that's so we could possibly say travel and everything else, not sleeping in your own bed's worth 1/4 point.
So how long did it take you? Did you start that in week 1, or did it take you a couple weeks to adjust to that?
No, I knew that going in. We were going to go with 0, just because I know, and I've seen now, like I said, and the more that they add in, you add in the
fans.
The more that you add in technology,
all right, and
get rid of the human element of the officiating, you're going to have less and less of a home field advantage.
Well, we got another question from the chat. Let's just go to this one. It says, just again, you were talking about earlier in the podcast about the gambler's fallacy. And the question from the chat was, do NBA games this year apply to that? Based on the new NBA where teams are playing each other twice within a 2-day period. For example, just the Bucks and Heat play twice. Does that factor in with the gambler's fallacy with the teams know each other a little bit better or game planning? How do you work that?
Yeah, that specific game, I think like the Heat lost by like 45 points or something like that in the next game. And then they came back the next day and the line was only maybe a half a point different than it was the day before. So that'll let you know there's really not that much. There wasn't much weight put on the fact that they just got blown out the night before by 40 plus points, whatever it was. The line is going. The reason that line is going to really move a little bit is because of the fact that people are going to have that recency bias and they're going to see that game before. What's interesting in sports, you talk about the hot hand. Basketball's notorious for this. A guy hits, let's say, 3 threes in a row, and you'll hear the announcers or even the teammates like, well, we wanted to, he was hot. We want to feed him the ball. He's hot. They've never been able to prove hot exists or cold exists. We know it happens after the fact. And we said, boy, it was hot.
Yeah, but you've played pickup basketball. We've all played pickup basketball. And I don't care if you're an average or a poor shooter. You've had that game where you just could not miss. And you knew when the ball left your hand in that pickup basketball game that it was going through the hoop. The zone, like you said, you can't prove it, but the person who's in it knows it because they start hitting one and it just feels good. And it's not these lucky shots. So yes, there's no scientific proof for it. It's just one of those things like the catch rule in the NFL. I know a catch when I see a catch. I don't need to know that he made a football move and all these things. You know when you feel it. All right, gambler's fallacy. Let's keep going with this. This is an interesting concept here. So where else does this apply to in sports? So right now, NBA betting, right? So we have the NFL playoffs. Where do you think the traps are? People need to be aware of the gambler's fallacy. What are going to be the most common traps heading into this heavily gambled season right now?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the traps are like you're looking at the NFC. So let's say the Cowboys make it. I heard going in because the NFC East right now, if you're watching this live, was an absolute mess. Whoever's going to make the playoffs is going to be a sub 500 team. And I heard it on the game last week because everyone lost last week from that division except for Dallas. And I don't remember which game I was watching, but they said, Dallas really is, they've got momentum. And just like you were talking about, momentum kind of plays into the gambler's fallacy. I've played sports. I've shot. I haven't gone on too many hot streak shooting. I can tell you that. But I have gotten, I've been hot at the plate, and you're like, it's the same thing. You just have that feeling like they can't get me out. It's a mentality, but usually you don't feel that. And you didn't feel that on the first swing or the second swing. You were deep into this hot streak when you felt it. It's so hard to predict the hot streak
when it wasn't bettable anymore, when it was when it was descriptive rather than predictive.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And we've seen this. There's multiple examples. So what you do, especially in-game betting, if you're in-game betting and you're betting on the probability, this a lot of this has to do when you're out at the casinos. They have like you could bet next plays, things like that, to not get yourself in that stuck in there. I find this happens in DFS quite a bit, especially baseball. Baseball DFS is notorious. A guy has a couple of good games in a row. He hits a home run in back-to-back games. Inevitably, he's just going to be overplayed in that third game and fourth game. And I'll play it the way what he should be. I'll have the ownership of that player, what I think it should be, and he'll inevitably be doubly owned. And it burns you when the guy's hot, and people will tell you, yeah, well, he's hot. You had to know to play him. But again, it goes back to they're really, you have to convince yourself there is no such thing as hot and cold.
And when you do that, and that happens in DFS when a player's over-owned, you'll be wrong sometimes, but when you're right, baby, you're going to be right and win a contest. You're okay being wrong when you're right. The upside is high. Okay, so anything else that we need to be aware of outside of the gambler's fallacy for the NFL playoffs? Last year what we talked about was playoff pools. game selection of pools. I'm sure everyone now that did fantasy football, and you're still going to do DFS over at DFS Army, you're still going to sports bet. But how about these pools? Talk a little bit about how we can get an advantage playing in these playoff pools, regardless of format.
Well, when you talk about, it depends obviously on the pool. So you're talking about like a pool. Well, if we do a fantasy pool like the one that we're doing together.
Okay. Again, just as a general statement, people are going to be, they want to come over to Sports Bet Army, use code BET to get 20% off. They're going to be coming over there. And what are some of the actual pieces of advice? Because people are still going to be doing fantasy. They're still going to be doing DFS. I think postseason leagues in general. Can you talk a little bit about that? What kind of pools people could look for to gain an advantage? Talk about your general philosophies, as in you've always told me, make sure you read the rules, things like that. Just give me overlying bullet points here.
Yeah, I've talked to you about pools before, and how you really want to use the betting markets in your pools to give you some help in how to pick whatever the rules are. First of all, obviously understand the rules of your pool. I'll give you an example of a Calcutta type of pool. We've talked about these Calcuttas. You and I don't know if we talked about it on the podcast. Simply, a Calcutta is just an auction. It's a great pool to run if you want to run a pool with your friends before the NFL tournament or the NFL playoffs start. It's essentially a tournament. You can auction off all of the teams. I believe there's going to be 14 teams in the postseason. So you start with you look at the Vegas odds, take the team with the worst odds to win it all, which will probably be the team who comes out of the NFC East, maybe, and then work your way up to Kansas City, who's going to have the best odds to win the Super Bowl, and auction them off among your friends. Obviously, you could do it online. You don't need any special software. It's 14 teams. You could do a chat room, and then you auction off the teams, and then you come up with some sort of a allocation of paying everyone back based on teams winning. Usually, it's about 40 to 50% of the pot to the team that wins the entire thing. And then you could work from there. But how you would do that?
Wait one second. Wouldn't you just spend all your auction money on the team most likely to win? In this case, Kansas City.
Well, you don't have it. It's unlike a fantasy draft where we all have $250 to spend. In auction, this is unlimited amount of money to spend. So,
but it's your real money. It's actual
real money. So
right.
So I may buy. I may be the highest bid on Washington, the football team, for $10, and then Kansas City might go for $300 because what I'm doing is buying that team, and I'm going to get a percentage of the pot. So maybe 45% of the pot goes to the Super Bowl champion. So if you got a $3,000 pool, you've got like $1,400 or whatever, and now you're taking them. But if you have pools like that, and I'm in several of them, especially for the NCAA, it worked great. The NCAA tournament, we do this for all the golf majors. Utilize the lines and the odds to your advantage. I do that in almost every pool I run or am a part of. Is I just go to the odds, because the odds are going to give you a wealth of information. The thing is, when you're sports betting and you look at the odds, that your job is to try to beat those odds. When you're playing in a pool, your job is to beat the other players in the pool. And if you're utilizing the best information we have out there, which are the odds, then you're going to use those to your advantage. If you're looking at specific play, if somehow your pool has to do with players and scores, you have to be creative. There's all sorts of odds out there now. There's prop odds and things like that. Try to incorporate that into what your whatever it is that your pool is, whatever the rules are for that pool.
All right. That feels like a good place to stop. We're going to try to come back with these Beat the Bookie podcasts with some, not just picks and plays, but more evergreen topics. So you can continue, as you did this time, to send us your questions. But I want to encourage people to go over to Sports Bet Army, sportsbetarmy.com. Use code BET, B-E-T, sign up, get 20% off. And John, give us the elevator pitch on what they get when they come over to Sports Bet Army. Why should someone join that's interested in sports gambling?
Yeah, if you're interested, especially if you've never really gotten into sports betting at all, it's a great place to come, because there's a lot of learning. There's a lot of new players, new bettors like yourself, and you have what we do is we get you into the Slack chat. In that Slack chat, you've got myself and two other coaches. We give out our plays. More importantly, though, you can ask questions in our own specific chat. Slack chat rooms. Ask us any questions that you want. They get answered in there. Of course, if you want to privately ask us questions, you can do that as well. So to learn how to become more profitable, it's a great resource. If you are someone who's been playing for a long period of time, you've been a sports bettor for a long period of time, there's going to be some things in there that you may learn from as well. So some more advanced strategies, some things, some hedging techniques, some futures plays, things that you may not have thought of, maybe help with your modeling. We've got some people that are looking to build models on their own, which we're trying to help those guys out as well. So there's
wait, hold on a second. You're going to help guys that have been doing this for a little while that want to build their own model. You over at sportsbetarmy.com will actually help them, give them hands-on advice on how to do that.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to build. Yeah, not going to build the model for you, of course, but if you need some help with where to find the data, where to get your data, right, where you might be going wrong, where you might be going right. You've got access to guys who have done it before. So
yeah, so that's what I think is the most important takeaway here. So it doesn't matter if you're someone who just wants to put $100 in your account and make $10 bets, you could help them. Or if you're someone that's been doing this for a while and really wants to flesh out your own models, you could help them. You could tell them where to shop for the nails and the hammers and put everything together. That's what I love about it, John. I'm just from peeking in over there. I'm watching you guys post things. You do give out your picks and plays, but again, that's based on modeling. You post your win rates like you admitted. You're having a little cold streak in one sport, but in another sport, you're going off. You post all of that stuff up there. That's what I love. Just a couple other housekeeping notes for those of you interested in dynasty fantasy football and best ball. That'll be starting up again before you do it. And the geek over at DFS Army and myself will be continuing to pump out all the content for that as well. You can go over to DFS Army. Never too late to join with all the great sports going over there. Give my friend John Alesia Statsational a follow on Twitter at Statsational, and then myself at Alan Seslowsky, again for continuing tips and different information that's going on. All right, my friend John, Happy New Year to you. And what are you doing tonight? Anything good?
Nothing special tonight. No. Yeah, we'll just be following the NBA and DFS NBA.
Is there a UFC on tonight as well?
No, I don't. Is there a UFC tonight? Not that I'm.
Usually there's a New Year's Eve-ish. So unless I missed it, again, I used to be hardcore UFC. I'm talking going about a decade, and then each year I become a little less attached, and then I just know the mainstream. And I was hoping there would be something on tonight. I really want to start getting back into it. I see how much fun you guys are having over there at Sports Bet Army, posting picks, and also on the DFS Army side, posting lineups and things like that. So, any good foods tonight?
Nothing. Tomorrow I'll be eating well though, because I'm going up to see some family. So I'll be. I got my aunt. I got my aunt an automated. It makes pasta. You just put the ingredients in, like eggs, flour, and everything, and somehow the pasta comes spitting out of it. So I'm looking forward to trying that.
And what is what's your? You just think about going back to your teens or your middle school years or high school or after college. What is when I say New Year's Eve? What thought pops in your head? What was one of your most memorable New Year's Eves?
Yeah, I've had a few good ones, but. I mean, as a young kid, I mean, this is going to sound a little silly. We were obviously weren't able to stay up usually. But this was one of the few nights we were able to stay up till midnight. We'd have the, just like that wine. You ever have that wine cheese? Like you get in the store. Yeah. I'm still addicted to it. So that was
like the little nuts on the outside.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was be like Ritz crackers and wine cheese, 8-9-year-old me getting to stay up at, till midnight. Having that shit, I'm still addicted to the wine cheese. Those were good. Yeah, I've had some that I don't quite remember as well.
Those are the best ones.
Yeah, those were later on.
So if you're listening to this right now, remember to give the post a like, give it a share if you want, or comment to us. Tell us your most memorable New Year's Eve. We want to hear about it. We don't care how X-rated or G-rated it is. We want to hear about it. And maybe we can run a contest one time for one of the holidays. People telling us their crazy stories. So again, please do us a favor. If you got value from this podcast, from my friend John Alesia here, you could pay us back just by giving a like. That helps with the YouTube overlords, the algorithm, getting us up there, getting us a little more noticed. The podcast has been growing every month, and that is why we are back doing this more, to give you more information for the people. For John Alesia, I am at Alan Seslowsky. We'll see you next time on the Beat the Bookie podcast.